I mean, most people aren't asking themselves how committed they are to their team because it'd be pretty incriminating. Because a lot of people just kind of have jobs. I just get paid to do X, and they haven't decided to take their job like a vocation, like it's a calling for me. And I mean, if there's something I'm doing that for sure, which is inviting people to really fully give a shit as if it matters, because I say it matters. Like that, whenever we turn 95 and we're on our deathbed, we're going to look back and look at. We know from the research now, it's the quality of relationships that matters, not the watch and not the trip and not the blah blah blah. It's how much of a difference did you make in the lives of others, and how much of a difference did you let other people make in your life.
Welcome to the Paid Forward Society, where we believe that leadership is a continuous learning journey and where knowledge is passed on to the next generation of leaders. I'm Roman Jordan. I've been learning and practicing management of global teams for about 10 years. In this podcast, we will explore the many facets of leadership as we talk to inspiring managers, entrepreneurs, coaches, veterans, and athletes who empower their teams and deliver results. Together, we will discover the keys to success through empathy, purpose, and care. Today, my guest is Adrian Culler. Adrian is a senior partner at the executive coaching firm Technoground. He coaches executives and entrepreneurs for themselves, their teams, and clients to create new, unprecedented results and experience fulfillment in their work. He is also the co-host of the Naked Leadership podcast. I really enjoyed the no bullshit attitude of Adrian. And you can expect a twist in the middle of the episode where Adrian coached me. So I'm bringing to you Adrian. Let's go. Hey, Adrian. Thanks for joining me. How are you today?
Roman, good, my man. It's so good to be with you.
Yeah, likewise. So very excited to have that conversation with you. Last week we met for the first time, and we had a very good intro call. So I'm really excited to hear more from you and from your experience, and giving a different perspective on leadership. And I believe that this conversation is going to be epic. So really looking forward to it.
Let's do it, my brother.
All right. So why don't we start with you? I mean, who are you, Adrian, and what's your journey into leadership?
Yeah, my journey to leadership. Well, all right. First off, name's Adrian Koehler. Live here in West Hollywood, California. Got a couple kids, and they're awesome. Scout and Charlie, and they keep me on my toes. And I think my calling to be a dad is like the most fun, exhilarating, humbling experience of my life. So I'm into it. And let's see, but I didn't grow up here. So I've been in California for almost 20 years. Previously, I lived in Illinois. I grew up in the middle of nowhere. My hometown was 8,000 people. So a bunch of cornfields and a few people around, maybe even more cows. What's the thing about New Zealand and sheep? Anyway, something like that.
Yeah.
Lots of cows where I grew up, and lots of farmland. A lot of like just amazing salt of the earth, quote unquote, type people. And my parents were both school teachers and very involved in civic life in small town. And I got to see my journey into leadership. I was born into leadership. My parents were very involved at a civic level and even an organizational level. I mean, they were leaders in a small church back there, and they're obviously school teachers. So they were very involved in the education system in that little small town. My dad actually taught for 30 years at the high school he went to. So, lots of honor around investing where you're planted type thinking. And so I just got to see my parents really involved. And so it wasn't like, maybe you ought to be a leader. It was just like I was, just because I was a Koehler kid in that small town. And so everybody knew who I was. I was Jim and Angie's boy. And I realized for myself that I just liked leading. Leadership actually kind of saved me in that way. Like, I don't know, for most people, but I was angsty as a teenager. I think most people are at some level, but I realized that like I was just more comfortable when I was, at least having a vote about what was going to be happening and what we're doing, and realized pretty early that every moment in life is up for grabs. Nobody's writing the script for what you have to do. You actually, and so you're obviously your own free agent, but even more so, if you want the maximum amount of like, maybe I'd say it this way, value goes up when engagement goes up. And so if you want to like decide to go get all in and like really care and like give a shit and be involved, people will follow you. And sometimes that works out, sometimes it doesn't work out. But either way, it's at least for me, that's always been meaningful to feel like I was making a difference. So as a youngster, like I would just, pick myself as a captain at recess and start putting that team together or start this thing or invite these guys out to hang out or whatever. So like leading, which is just, choosing to, I guess, execute on influence, maybe is one way of looking at leadership is like, we all have influence and then, but just choosing to execute on that and just to test that and see who would follow and to see if your ideas would work. So that was always in me and I practice and I just was less anxious if I knew what was happening next. And if you get to write your own story, I think that's that for me, that was always a solve for kind of that teenage angst. And then I went off to college. I played sports in college. I was a football player, American football. And so in those environments where we always, opportunities to lead and to step up and to be a leader, at least in your team or in your group. I played, defensive back and just loved it and involved in student government, student leadership at my university and obviously all volunteer positions. But I just liked the feeling of knowing I'm changing this place. I get to have a hand in the future of what's going to go on here and my own quality of existence while I'm here. It just felt better to like have a vote. And then maybe I'll pause there for a minute. But anyway, I've always just been decided to care and decided to see other people. And if you do that really well, people tend to give you space and room to, make the call.
I love that.
Yeah.
And then if we move forward to your professional experiences, I remember from our first discussion that you had a very interesting roller coaster of experiences.
Lots of turns, man. Lots of turns. So I coach founders of companies now and I help build their leadership teams and shape those cultures at my firm called Take New Ground. I've got a business partner. We have a dozen folks on staff with us now that get to work with. We work with fast moving companies. We don't work with a ton of corporate America, but if I'm going to work with corporate America, it's got to be with some kind of edgy, committed group of people inside the big behemoth. I'm not that interested in doing, 1 mile up view of corporate strategy. I'm just not that guy. I like scrappiness. I like, a team that's committed to something, that's on the hook for something. And they tend to need our work a lot more because they've decided to make some declaration about what they're committed to. And when you're on the hook, you're desperate for help and you're desperate for resources and it gets scrappy and it gets messy. And so we really specialize in the human side of business endeavor, right? So how do you build trust, build communication, generate creativity? With that, you also have to get really good at having conflict and reconciling the past and corrective behavior for the people.
Yeah.
So we like working with scrappy organizations. I've worked with big brands and that, but I've always liked the scrappy ones. So we do that work now. And, but I didn't start here. And, most people that gotten like the coaching work might have come from some kind of consulting agency or whatever and decide, or maybe they were a specialist in real estate. So now they're a real estate coach or something like that. Not my story at all. I actually started as a pre-med guy in college and decided I didn't want to be a doctor when I grew up. And so what do I want to do? I still want to travel the world and help people. So I actually got a nursing degree in undergrad, which was kind of a surprise to everybody, including myself. But I liked all the science part of it. What I dug about, I worked in the intensive care unit, mostly pediatric intensive care. So what I dug about that is like, of course, it's high stakes. You're really dealing with life and death. And it is that hospital room on a Friday afternoon with a mom and a dad and a kid that's really sick. That's like the worst day of their life. Yeah. And they're scared to death and they cannot imagine if it doesn't go well. And they're really at the mercy of the professionals that are there in the room. And so I took that, opportunity really seriously, both the science of it, making sure the kid sustained and survived and got through, but then the art of it, which was like, how do I help, clear up the chaos that's here going on right now about the future and about what's happening, the implications and all that. But then also, generate a level of connection, because when people are under stress, they typically just go for, their brain takes over, and their brain naturally, human brain just wants to survive, which is obviously physical survival, but from an ego sense or a psychological sense, it's looking good and feeling good and being right and being in control. Those are the four main ego needs. So I really enjoyed helping moms and dads that were freaked out come together and connect and communicate and persist and make some of these potentially the worst days of their life actually some of the most beautiful days of their life, and they can have breakthrough conversations and trust each other and communicate and have this moment of togetherness. So I did that for a good while, actually just a couple years out of undergrad in Chicago. Then I moved out here to Los Angeles, where I live now, because I'd always had a spiritual side to me, what I guess some people might call a religious side. I've never been that religious in the sense that like committed to some kind of dogma or some kind of existential belief system that framed everything else for me. More for me, it was always a revolution of love type thing, if I was going to try to be poetic. But I was captivated by the idea that if I gave my life to making the world a better place and reconciling people to themselves and reconciling us to the earth and to whatever view of God you've got, that's a pretty fun way to spend my life. So anyway, moved out to LA to get involved in this church called Mosaic, which was we called ourselves the research and development arm of Christianity. So we were into like looking at things in a fresh new way. We were inclusive before it was a political statement. We just loved everybody and wanted to make the world a better place. And that's what in my 20s, I was very activistic. So I knew that if I met somebody that was really talented, I could connect to that talent and then find a place in the community with those that are marginalized or poor or down and out, that you could leverage your skill set to make their life better, and your life would get exponentially better, probably even more than theirs would, because you had decided to give of yourself, decided to be of service, decided to make a difference. And that's a new experience than most of us walk around thinking about. Most of us are just trying to get through the day, but these kind of peak moments of insight, and it's crazy. Like if you're mentoring a homeless youth, they obviously appreciate it, but the fact that you get to do that is amazing, and it changes you, and it's the story you're telling every day, because you'll tell the story of the kid Ricky that you're mentoring, because nobody spends their time doing that. And so I would promise people, give me an hour of your week, it'll be your favorite hour of the week. Trust me. And I think we were good at delivering on that for people. So
how did it shape your coaching style then? I mean, are you leveraging the stories to make some points with your coachee, or how does you? I mean, or is just a great experience that you had? And is there anything that you took away from it that you are leveraging in your work now?
Sure. From the work that I do now, I rarely tell stories from that era of my life. I ought to. From that and all those experiences, we actually got connected. I got invited to run a foundation, and we worked in the prison system. So, and so literally I got connected to this group of lifers. So most of them had murdered somebody. And we started doing these leadership trainings behind bars with these guys. Then we trained them how to be trainers. And I tell some of those stories from time to time, mostly a little bit anecdotally, because anytime I'm meeting somebody and they I don't know, they tend to think that their situation is complex, or their situation, or they tend to as humans, I think we tend to think we're pretty unique, or that somebody's telling me about their founder who's kind of tough to wrangle. I'm like, my first coaching clients were murderers, so I'm okay. I can handle whatever you got going on, or even to be honest, I guess, like, no matter how dark something is or how criminal somebody is, I'm cool. I can handle all that. And I don't have much judgment for anybody. Like, I'll start with wherever they're at. So that was the transition between the pastoral work and the work that I'm doing now. Is I hired this guy to come in and run these trainings, and he'd been doing this management consulting coaching work, and he trained me in it. And then that's when I jumped in and started coaching people. And that was about just over a dozen years ago. So I do think of those stories. It does serve, especially when someone's really entangled in how special their moment is or how unique their situation is. I've seen people come back from the worst of situations. So whatever's going on, it's not as bad as the next guy. So you got to get over yourself and just get into the future instead of keep keep living out the sob story about how hard your life is. Whatever you've gone through, someone else has gone through a lot worse, and someone else has covered the terrain between the level of breakdown and the success that you're looking for. People have covered a lot bigger gaps than anybody I'm talking to.
Good. So it's about resilience and also getting perspective on the rest of the world and say, okay,
100%.
You can get it. You can make it.
100%. I mean, when I first started coaching, I was hoping people wouldn't ask me about my background just because I was a little bit, I didn't know how to talk about it. And I just tried to avoid it. And because I felt like I was disqualified in some regards. I knew I could generate results for them, but I figured that they would naturally kind of think, oh, this guy, whatever, he comes from a weird background. There's no way he could help me. But then I remember the first client I had that said this to me. His name was Tyler, and he said, because I asked him why he hired me, and he said, "Oh, because of your weird background. You've done things. You've lived like 4 lives, man, and you've been an expert in all these different fields, and spoken on huge stages, and traveled throughout so many cultures. You can handle whatever I'm going through," which was true. It's like I've got that level of audacity that's it's even weird to say it, but you plot me in anywhere, man. I can figure it out just because there's a human endeavor, which is always about trust and connection. And that's universal.
I have a confession to make. I got that sense when I got on your website, when I had the first conversation with you. I really got the sense that you were different and that we would have a lot of fun in that conversation. That's also why I wanted to meet with you and have that conversation. And
right on, man.
So that's cool. Yeah, going back to your website, the style is different, is refreshing.
Yes.
And that leads me to my first question. Is coaching bullshit?
Yeah, so you're referring to our website, which just plainly says most coaching is bullshit, most team offsites are bullshit, and most assessments are bullshit. We just I tend to agree with the cynical notion around my industry. So yeah, I think most of it is. Now, why do I think most of it is? Not because the people aren't nice, not because the information isn't or couldn't be helpful. It's because there's usually a deep lacking of verve, of courage in the intervener. So, what we're committed to in our firm is to have all the no bullshit conversations right now. Like I warn every client, I said, hey, the conversations that are running your organization right now, they're the ones that are under the table, the ones that people can't talk about, the ones that they are not willing to talk about, the ones they're scared to talk about, the ones they'd never tell you. Those are the ones that are currently running your organization. And if you give me enough time, not much time, I'll prove it. Because I just got to talk to a few of your employees about what are we not talking about around here that needs to be talked about. What feedback do you have for your boss that you haven't given? Like all those very simple questions. If that stays not clear and not on the table, maybe we'll hit 80% capacity. Maybe. If we get those conversations on the table and take all the moralization off of it, if it's good or bad or right or wrong or who's good, what should he be, and all that kind of moralizing, shame-based conversation. If we take all those labels off of it, which are really natural for human beings, all that's possibility. Like all that's learning, all that's the next edge, all that's the potential for where trust could be. Because I'm done withholding my feedback. I actually want to give. I care enough about the person and I care enough about the mission that I'm not going to hold back anymore. And if you get a team that's that committed to the mission and that committed to the people around the table, which is rare. I mean, probably people are listening now. You think about like, what are the 5 judgments you have for your teammates that you haven't told them? It's not that hard to think about it. I mean, it's not that hard for that to come to mind. And why don't you tell them? And I don't think there's an answer besides I'm scared or I'm too proud or they're not worth it or, we just got judgments that hold us back. But if you get off that and get into your commitment, I mean, most people aren't asking themselves how committed they are to their team because it'd be pretty incriminating. because a lot of people just kind of have jobs. I just get paid to do X, and they haven't decided to take their job like a vocation, like it's a calling for me. And I mean, if there's something I'm doing that for sure, which is inviting people to really fully give a shit as if it matters, because I say it matters. Like that, whenever we turn 95 and we're on our deathbed, we're going to look back and look at, we know from the research now, it's the quality of relationships that matters, not the watch and not the trip and not the blah, blah, blah. It's how much of a difference did you make in the lives of others, and how much of a difference did you let other people make in your life? So the biggest challenge for human beings is not some kind of exterior challenge. It's an internal challenge. Is like, have I decided to go all in? Have I decided to make my life really count? And we're scared to death of that naturally, because we're going to fail. But we think that I failed, I did that thing, it didn't work out, that's who I am, instead of, no, I am a resilient human being that's full of unlimited potential that I'm going to spend the rest of my life exploring. And that requires a lot of risk if you're going to do that well. But that's where freedom is. That's where life is itself. I think vitality occurs in the giving of oneself for the sake of something bigger than you. And we're dying for vitality. I mean, we'll settle for watching Netflix, but we're dying for vitality and wanting to really be alive and make a difference and become the person we're proud to be. That's what we all want. I mean, we might say it with hushed tones or in a journal somewhere, but can I become a person that I want to look up to? Can I be my own mentor? Can I, and most of us won't ask ourselves that question. I know at different seasons of my life, I was in certain levels of denial and I didn't want to ask myself how I'm really doing, but I know what it feels like now. And you probably know this too, when you have a really clear vision for yourself and you know that your time and your words and your actions matter, and you get to go do that on a daily basis. And that's really fulfilling.
Yeah.
And the human being won't ever get old of fulfillment. Let me say that in a better way. Let me say it positively. The most meaningful thing for us is the pursuit of fulfillment. And I don't think you ever, even if someone's very, very criminal, they're doing it because it makes them feel good, and because there's something about it that's satisfying to them. And so anytime, I mean, especially with my clients and like guys like yourself, I always, when I just meet them, I lean in a little bit and I say, I know what your secret is. And they get really nervous when I say that. I say, I know what your secret is. I say,
That sounds
you're
scary indeed.
right. I know what your secret is. Oh shit! What happened? Has he been watching my web history? No, your secret is that you're operating at a 6 out of 10, but you're acting like it's a 10 out of 10. And your 6 out of 10 is better than most people's 10 out of 10, like high performers like yourself. And you know it. I know it when I'm operating at a 6 out of 10. My decent performance is better than most people's great performance. And I'm not saying that arrogantly. It's just when you're talented and when you're engaged, you get away with shit. But the difference is, I know this for myself, when I'm operating at a 6 out of 10 and just coasting, I feel shitty about it and I'm haunted by it. Maybe some other people can numb out in other ways and they're not haunted by it. I know that I am. So, and reality is, if they're at a 6 out of 10, it's probably, if they call it a 6 out of 10, it's probably a 3 or a 4 when you put it in the context of what they're capable of. Mm-hmm. So vitality comes when I've just decided to go all in, decided to be a 10 out of 10, stop playing a comparison game and start comparing myself with what I'm capable to. And that's going to look incriminating when we look at it, because like how great you can be, that's an unending story. We don't know how great you can be. I don't know how great I can be, but I want to die trying. I want to throw myself at it. So I guess with all that, it's like that's for me the thing I'm most happy about in my work is I get to hopefully do a phenomenal job at provoking this vitality and commitment in people, because that's where life starts to really matter.
I agree. I mean, I think I got this epiphany as well, probably 10 years ago when I discovered Simon Sinek, Start With Why, all that shit.
Right. Right.
I'm a big believer in it, and suddenly everything, that was the puzzle coming into place, and say, oh yeah, that's so. What is my why? And
Yeah.
what do I want to? What's my pursuit of happiness or fulfillment?
Hmm.
What is going to drive me? And yeah, I see what you mean. So how do you help people, get from the 3, 4, 6 to the 10? What's
Well,
the process?
what's the what?
What's the process?
What's
What's
the
the
process?
Yeah.
Sure. Well, with everything we're doing, we always start. What was it? Covey famously said, "Begin with the end in mind." It always is going to begin with helping people, and there's lots of ways to say this, or supporting, or whatever word you want to use, but doing nothing until the aim is clear. Like, what's the aim? Some people might call that a goal. Some people might call that a key result, or OKRs these days. But what's the aim? And even the most talented people are. I'm no longer surprised now, but I remember being surprised in the beginning. Like, you talk to somebody that's like kicking ass, and I don't know, they're doing $500 million a year, and I asked them, "Hey, well, where do you want this thing to be in 6 months?" And they're surprisingly unclear. Not so surprisingly now. I mean, there's reasons why confusion about the future is a better strategy than being clear, because, right? Probably lots of reasons come to your mind. I'm off the hook. I don't know if I've failed or not. I don't have to be that accountable. Don't have to be that responsible. I kind of look good in my own eyes, look good in the other people's eyes. I have a sense of control because now they're dependent on me. We're not like dependent on a plan. Now we're dependent on a personality. Anyway, there's lots of reasons to be confused about the future. But if I'm going to work with somebody, I need to hold the space, if you will, or generate a conversation, a context where no matter what, we're going to be really crystal clear about what outcomes we're pursuing. Now, we're not going to prostitute ourselves for the sake of outcomes. But if we don't get crystal clear about outcomes, we won't know how to gauge our behavior. And is my behavior, and then my decisions and my thinking and my belief, is that working or not? Not like, is it good or bad, but is it working or not? I don't know until I have a destination. So if you're in Seattle and I'm in Los Angeles and we're both going to New York, if I think I'm in Seattle but I'm in Los Angeles, I'm screwed.
Yeah.
I don't know. If I don't know, anyway, destination, got to get really clear on that first off. And that takes a while. Because we tend to not be that clear and give ourselves reasons why we're not. We blame the market, we blame the team, we blame the company, blah, blah. We blame lots of other people. But the reality is we have enjoyed the luxury of being vague. So that's first step. That sometimes takes a while, actually, like maybe a couple conversations with people when I start working with them. And then we got to get connected to the other plot point, which is current reality. Like, where are things now? And especially, it's very, human beings tend to like to dress up something to make it seem better. I forget which philosopher it was, but he said the human being's view of themselves fluctuates between flattery and pure fantasy. We just tend to do that. And we tend to excuse ourselves out of our own, I don't know, we all walk around with a deep level of self-judgment at some level, or the inner critic or the imposter syndrome. All that stuff just illuminates the fact that we're all really hard on ourselves. And we naturally think other people think as poorly about us as we do. So we want to like dress things up to look better in your eyes. Why? Because I'm still trying to convince myself that I'm not the piece of shit I'm afraid I am. I think that's pretty human. But if I were to take off all the judgment, all the meaning of it, and just looked at current reality and look at it like in a sober way, because I know when somebody tells me about how things are, it's usually much worse than what it is, which is fine. But if you can get to that level of honesty, then you actually, back to the analogy between if I'm going to New York and I'm in LA instead of Seattle, now I know where I am. Now I can actually plan a route because I actually know how bad things are. Because there's usually a lot of feedback in there. Like when I'm talking to leaders about, well, tell me about your senior leadership team. Is there anybody on the team that if you had courage, you would have fired a long time ago? And there's always one or two people on the list. Or if there's if you look around the table, who's not performing, who hasn't been performing over the last few months, but you haven't dared bring it up to them. And there's always a few conversations there. And and not even, there could be those critiques, but actually if the game was really high, like optimal engagement, optimal results, then we're all missing the mark. Even I'm missing the mark. If you interviewed my teammates around what Adrian could be doing on the team, there are places in which I'm not fulfilling, and that just is what it is, so got to get really clear on an aim, got to get really clear on current reality. Now, out of that, naturally, what's going to come up next is all of our bullshit, meaning all the ways in which we justify why things are the way they are, instead of owning the fact that they're the way that things are the way they are because we want them to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
So I love to ask people what their main complaint is. Like, look around, like, think about your business, think about your team. What's your main complaint? And then I'll ask usually, how long has it been that way? And it's been that way for 2 days. It's been that way for several weeks, if not months. So naturally, they start talking about why they couldn't change it. I want to talk to them about, why do you like it that way? Why do you prefer to have the things that you are complaining about? And they're like, what? I don't prefer them, blah, blah, blah. No. If you don't want something in your life, you get rid of it. So there must be at least a hidden reason under the table, again, reason why you like what you say you don't want. And let's explore that for a little while. And because that's the, I don't know, Pressfield would call it the resistance. We would call it a racket, like where we're telling ourselves a story that if we looked at reality in an honest way, our story doesn't match reality. Now, why go there next? Because if someone is unwilling to own their inauthenticity, and we're all inauthentic, all of us, I like what Peterson says. He says, always tell the truth, or at least don't lie. We're all lying to ourselves in some way. Like, no bad on it either. I mean, we tend to judge people so freely, and we ought to get off the judgment, because then we could actually get in a real conversation. But if we put new solutions in the hands or in the mind of the person that tolerated the bad solution, the new solution is going to be the next bad solution, because they won't keep it up, because the old bad solution worked for them for 6 months.
Yeah.
So, and why is that? Because things got off track and they didn't want to deal with it, or they didn't have time, quote unquote, or they didn't want to have that corrective conversation. So it doesn't matter. So, because, nothing ruins a plan like reality. Something's going to go bad. And then if you don't have the courage to stand up and, right the ship, then it's just going to be a matter of time. So I want people to get a hold of the stories they live in that generate the future they don't want. And if they can get a hold of that story and shift it, at least try it on, right? Shift their mindset, because I kind of alluded to this earlier without saying it so on the nose, but all results come from actions we take or don't take. All actions come from decisions we make or don't make. And all decisions come from a certain type of thinking. And all thinking comes out of a belief system, right? Like we have a filter of who I am, have a filter of who you are, filter of situational awareness, filter of what a job is, all these types of things. That's what we call the occurrence. And people react to the world the way the world occurs to them, not the way things are, the way it occurs to me. Like, we're all, this is just neuroscience, and none of us, this is just gravity, right? So you and I are on this call right now, and it seems like we're on the same call. We're on the same podcast, but we're not. I'm on my version as it occurs to me. You're on your version as it occurs to you. You're wondering about different things than I am. I'm over here thinking, is that helpful? What should I say next? I hope I'm not being an idiot. I hope I'm providing value. All this, should I shut up soon? You might be saying, I hope he shuts up soon. Anyway, there's different things we're wondering about. And that's what I call the podcast. What you're wondering about, you call the podcast, but it's different things. So people react to the world the way the world occurs for them, number one. The number two is the world happens for us, occurs for us in language. So I really help people get clear about the milieu, about the environment of being in which they show up to the world. And if you can get clear and clean about that and get committed, which is a conversation about the future, not like surviving, which is a conversation about the past, or reacting, which is a conversation about the past, get them on their toes, and get them in a what I would call a generative state, that the future is what I make it to be, which is a pretty daring idea. Most people won't sign up for that idea. They'll say it'll be the best that it can be, which means that fate or the market or other people, they get to create my reality, and I have to try my best to make the best of what the world or others or even my past, if I come from a traumatic history, quote unquote, or something like that, or I'm this or I'm that, I'm a creative, therefore I can't be disciplined, or I'm a, I'm, I oh, I'm a procrastinator. People own stuff like that, which are curses we say to ourselves, which is just another way of hiding. So to put a summary on that point, I want people to get really clear to their own mindset, people would call it, I guess, but their own belief system that's generating their existence and their own reality that they tend to play in, and invite them to change their mind about some really bad ideas. Okay. So out of that, last point is then you get a plan together and you got to go throw yourself at it, and you got to get a lot of feedback. So
I think I get it. So what you're trying to say is basically you need a strategy. A strategy. I mean, there's a good book, Good Strategies, Bad Strategies, that says, okay, you need to define where you want to be. That's the first step. Where you want to go, the destination, the aim that you call out, and then you do the analysis of where you are today, and try to understand the challenges. The good, the bad, the ugly, and then you define your roadmap, the step by step, the action plan that would get you to the objective. And of course, you need to be committed to that action plan, or at least to the destination. Maybe you would have to change. You need to pivot the way, you approach the problem, because you don't know what you are going to face at certain point of time. You may have to change the way, but if the destination is so clear, you know that you need to find another path. And the problem is that you call out is that if you are not clear enough about the future, it's just an idea, or too blurry.
Mm-hmm.
At the first challenge, you will stop. You will drop.
That's right. Yeah. When you hit that first obstacle, you'll say that, oh, this isn't going to work, or start to, play a blame game and whose fault is it, which is like a low level of thinking, instead of, okay, there's 5 people on this team and, we failed in that initiative. Let's talk about contribution. How did we all contribute to the breakdown? Instead, people tend to find someone to blame. And then that's the end of the story. And then that person's blackballed, or that person's a problem, or that person's this way. And people just stay very committed to their judgments of the person, instead of standing for the person, that they are capable. And maybe they're not. If they're not, you got to let them go do something else. But if they're capable and they just blew it, like, stand for them, like, believe, like, and how did if I'm the leader and somebody on my team blew it, what was missing from me in my leadership that I let this thing go all the way down the road and it failing? That's a courageous conversation that most leaders are not having with themselves. I told them what to do. That's all they say. I told them what to do. I told them when it was due. Instead of saying, hold on, how did I contribute to this breakdown? That's what a courageous leader does.
Agree.
So you're right. All that, which is pretty rote, right? It's pretty simple. When you regurgitate it back that way, and it's every business book from that talks about strategy is going to talk about that. Kind of the crux, or where we end up serving people, is that there's a level of honesty that usually is not embarked upon. And there's a level of camaraderie that people dare not have with one another, because it's going to require a level of vulnerability that I would prefer not to embark on, especially in this thing called work. I've got my personal life and I care about people in my personal life, but at work life, I'm just going to be about 50% in, and I hope it works, and so we hold ourselves back under the guise of, personal and professional separation, or whatever, or work-life balance. We like to use phrases like that to give ourselves justification for holding back our talents. So we tend to drop the floor out and like let's have all the conversations right now. Let's get real vulnerable with people. And some people hate that initially. I think we all do it in some regard, but there's a level of satisfaction that's possible if we decide to be fully human being with each other. And I'm not perfect, you're not perfect. You're going to blow it with me, I'm going to blow it with you. Can we get over that? And can we talk about what it takes to be fully engaged with one another and really fully, I call my work fierce advocacy. Like if we decide to really advocate for one another, it's going to generate a context of transparency and vulnerability that's really what we're all searching for. But some of us dare not step into it. So that's the kind of the context of our work is around integrity.
Yeah, agree. So we have 40 minutes in the episode. I just wonder whether we should go off script and we do that. We just do this exercise where we are transparent, and I am the coachee, and
Let's do it.
you hold the mirror to me.
Let's do it, man.
That could be interesting. I feel that there's a lot of let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah. Well, so what do you think is the most crucial conversation as you look out into your world, maybe into the future of your division, your team? Like what's one of the most crucial conversations you think that you really need to have a hold of? Maybe it's gone sideways now, or maybe there's just like a ton of possibility in something. Like what's the high value conversation for you?
I see that the job satisfaction is going down in my team.
Okay. How do you know that?
So we do have regular surveys, anonymous surveys that are done in the company, and I see reports, and it's trading down for the past month. So I want to have a conversation with my team about that, and be transparent. There are some external factors, market conditions and stuff like this, and rumors of reorgs and stuff like this that adds anxiety. But it's not just only that. I think one of the main drivers is that I'm asking more from the team and make them do stuff that they feel uncomfortable with. And because I need them to step up. I won't be able to do everything by myself. And if we want to deliver results for the company and on behalf of our customers, I really need them to step up. And I need to go beyond what they like to do. Yeah. And even if this, I'm claiming ownership there, trying to say, yeah, we are all owners of the company. And even if that's 20% or 10% outside of my job, we should do it. We have to do it.
Okay. So there's a mandate from above you for XYZ results. And it makes sense why there's some trepidation in you. If job satisfaction is going down from these anonymous surveys and you're about to ask them to do more, I get that you seem nervous about that. Makes sense.
Yeah, they so I have already asked people to do more, but and that's why I think the job dissatisfaction is going down. But what I think I've not done a good job at is holding them accountable and say, hey, we really need to move. We really need to. I heard the feedback, but I really need you to step up and take ownership. And that's the thing that I've not said clearly yet. And again, because I have excuses.
Well, why do you think you've held back from having the full conversation?
So I guess we entered the territory of what you said about excuses and such. There are some dynamics like rumors of reorg that makes people anxious. There have been layoffs in the industry that makes people even more anxious. So I want to be empathetic with that, but at the same time, I feel that we are not making enough progress, and I'm getting nervous about that. And I need to step up also. I need to hold the mirror and say, hey guys, if we don't do that, we might be in a situation we are not. I don't get any signals of us being in a bad situation and being potentially exposed to layoffs at all. I don't see that. On the contrary, there's more which is asked from us because they believe that we are part of the solution and not the problem. And I think this is where I see a big opportunity, and that's also a big reason why pushing people to take on more stuff, more, not in terms of, I don't want them to work crazy hours, but more bigger stuff, and not only what they like.
Yeah. And so you make up that if you go be honest with them, what's going to happen?
There are there are a couple of scenarios. I believe that I've been concerned about potential attrition, meaning people leaving, and people that I
Sure.
appreciate and I think value them, and I believe that there would be a loss for us. I think that there's that, and yeah, that is all. I think as a leader, there's always the fear or the feeling that you would not be liked because you are
Sure.
imposing stuff, and that's tough. You want,
Yeah.
I mean, you want to have good relationship with people, and I think that's what you said earlier. I think those tough conversations are tough because are difficult to have, because you need to be vulnerable,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't want to have people saying that I'm an asshole, for example.
Sure.
Or
Sure.
feel like
Even how do you feel now, even as you're talking about it?
so. I'm a big believer in. I'm a believer in many things, actually, but two things: having a purpose is important, and I think the purpose is clear. Or at least mine is super clear. There's a purpose for the team, and my purpose is to serve others and advocate for them. And I want everyone in my team to be successful. I know that some might not be successful in the future because they are not necessarily. We are going to outgrow them because of the growth
Sure.
of and there's that. And I
Is it
want to
okay?
help.
Can I interrupt you real quick?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, great. Because you're answering a question, just not my question. Do you remember what my question was? I'm not discrediting that answer, because that's answering a question. But do you remember what mine was?
I believe your question was what is some sort of what is your main concern? Some version of it.
No. So that's
Okay.
great though. This is great. Awesome. My question was, how do you feel even as you're talking about
Yeah.
it?
How do I feel? How do I feel?
Right.
Yeah,
Now,
which I understood the way I answered.
uh
Do I feel about it?
yeah.
It's
Like, what's your even as you're talking about it, I've got lots of feedback for you, or like lots of experience I have as I'm listening to you, but I was just checking in to what your own experience was even as you're talking about the issues.
I would say it's a mix of feelings, as in a bit of, I would say, sadness, because
Sadness, sure.
yeah, as in I know people love their job or really enjoy what they do, and they feel privileged to be in that role in that company, and I feel that they they don't they lack the self awareness to realize that it's probably not what they want in the future. And
Okay.
there's also a bit of, I don't want to say anger on my side, but getting out of patience,
Yes.
as in yeah, like
Yes.
it feels like I have been asking, and I have been patient to let them grow and digest and understand why we need those changes and why it's important, and
Yes.
I feel that, and lacking patience now that they are not stepping up.
Right on.
Yeah, and maybe I'm lacking the patience because it means that also I need to act upon that.
That's what I was going to ask about. Because anybody that's as nice as you are is usually angry, in my experience. Actually didn't surprise me that when I asked you how you felt, you went to a theoretical conversation.
Okay.
Because that's just would be my observation. Is you seem just my observation. And I don't know anything, but that you seemed mad to me, angry. And I could draw some parallels or draw some lines between that, but you tend to, it's in my experience of us knowing each other for so long now, for like whatever,
Yeah.
2 hours, is that, because you need them to step up and they haven't stepped up. And there's some, my guess is you've been trying to nice your way into these changes and it hasn't worked.
Yeah.
And most people, when they try to really help other people or try to like be warmth and empathetic, at some point there's a breaking point where you flip.
Yeah.
And flip and become dominating and become harsh. And so why we do that is because we're not fully honest with people. And we try to, you're a likable guy and you're a smart guy and you're an expert in your field and you care about people. And I think all that's true. And then, but if people don't make a shift, then you'll end up feeling taken advantage of.
Mm.
And at least like you're doing the work they're not doing. And you're making sacrifices they're not willing to make. And can be a level of resentment that comes through that. Now, the only way through this is to decide to go all in, meaning decide to get real about, if we don't make these changes, here's what's going to happen. And if you are, you seem like you wear the anonymous surveys as an indictment about yourself.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah, like job satisfaction's going down on the team.
Yeah.
Like it's your job, or like you even can generate job satisfaction. So I'm weird in the way that I think everybody creates their own experience. Not that I can't, as a leader, have an impact on that. But if they don't want to, it doesn't matter how many great things you do. If they don't want to be satisfied, they won't be satisfied. There are probably things you're doing that's dissatisfaction that they don't like. There's probably things. But I guarantee you the highest performers on your team are also pissed at you for tolerating bullshit. I say I guarantee. That's my guess. I'd put $100 on it. That if I interviewed your highest performers, hey, what's he tolerating that if you were the boss, you wouldn't tolerate? They got a long list. Now, so you got to decide who you want to keep, not fear who you're going to lose. That'd be my invitation. And most of the time in corrective conversations, we're short on time, so I'm kind of just giving advice here. If we had like another hour, we'd fully get into this. But when it's time to make a correction, if you're a leader making a correction, you first need to start with a confession, which usually sounds like, hey, this has been bothering me for about 6 months, and I've been too much of a wimp to tell you. But, right? You can relate to that?
Yeah.
So, but if you confess that and say, hey, here's what I've really been thinking and feeling, and I haven't told you, and it's on me, and I'm responsible for it, but I'm getting angry at you, but it's really, I'm angry at myself. And so I need to start a fresh conversation with you about the future. Here's where we need to be. Here's where we are today. I don't know if you want to do what's required, and if you don't want to do what's required, it's okay. You just can't be here.
Yeah.
So, you've needed to challenge them for a long while. I mean, even anonymous surveys are always a sign of cowardice. The anonymity of it actually usually serves no one.
I mean, because people, the system. So I don't blame that.
Oh, I understand. I understand. You work for a big company that does all that because they're scared. But I'm saying for you, though, at any point you can pull people together and discuss the survey results 1-to-1, 1-to-5. Let's talk about it. All the things you clicked on anonymously, can we talk about it? Because I really am committed for this working. So let's have the most honest conversation we've ever had. But that would take a level of guts, though. That is in you for sure. And that's the beauty of your anger or your frustration. You didn't want to say you're angry, but of your frustration, the beauty of that, it's fuel.
Yeah.
You can use it as fuel. And it's like, I'm just done. I'm done living this way. And I really am, and you'll have to check in with yourself. How committed are you to the team? How committed are you to the outcomes? And if those are both really high, then you can play to win instead of up until now, you've been playing not to lose quite a bit. Like, I don't want to lose people. Well, no. Transitions are great. The people that aren't committed get to go home. The people that are committed, we're in together, and camaraderie goes through the roof.
Yep.
So if we had a lot of time, I push my next call back a little bit so we can have some more of this conversation. But you know what you need to do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why, coaches that give people answers are fools. You know what the answer is. You're just tied up, right? With your own experience and your own frustrations and your own fears and concerns. And how am I going to look if I lose half the team? I mean, I'm assuming. And, what's going to happen. And, I want people to like me and all that. That's really normal, but right now that's been running the show. Like how you look in their eyes has been a very high priority for you. And that doesn't work, which but it's just really normal for us to really, try to people please our way through leadership, and it just doesn't work. I mean, I have the t-shirt. I've done that plenty in my life. So, now it's an exercise in trust and your own sense of identity. Like even if half the team decides to not like me and quit and say F you and you're the worst boss ever, who am I at the end of that conversation? And that's, am I willing to stand in my own integrity, and am I willing to really advocate for them even if they don't like me? There's a lot of art in how to have this conversation, and we can talk offline, whatever, have a real call about it to talk through it, because there's ways through. Here's the good news. If listeners are still listening, hey guys, the beauty of conflict is it generates trust. Yeah. And if I have it really well, people are closer after conflict. We're not further apart. If I do it well, there's ways to do it. And we teach this all the time. So that's the beauty of this, man. And just as I alluded to earlier, your highest performers are dying for you to have this combo. They might be polishing their resumes for other reasons.
Yeah, I agree. I wanted
Is that helpful?
Yeah, totally. I think
I'm not telling you anything you don't know. I know that. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. I'm just believing in you.
Thank you. That's
more
helpful.
Than you believe in yourself. Yeah.
That's really helpful, because I intend to have that conversation in my next team meeting. And I think one of the concerns was less about being likable, but remaining in control, I would say.
Right.
That my anger would not put me on the trajectory that I would say things that are not the most appropriate, or not going to deliver the outcome that I want. So I think you alluded to that, about the techniques that can handle your frustration.
Right on. Well, it's a good concern, right? So you don't want to indulge your anger. You want to learn from it.
Yeah.
Because everything you're angry about, it's mostly from self-betrayal, I would say. Like, because I'm mad at myself for tolerating these. I mean, it might be they've been doing this stuff, but if I'm the leader and I'm responsible, I've been tolerating it all along the way. So I'm kind of mad at myself, and I'm mad at the situation. And so don't indulge your anger, learn from it, and give yourself a lot of feedback. Confess that to the group, and they're going to lean in because they've been feeling it. They're frustrated as well. I mean, you'll be first guy in, and there's lots of conversations that they are dying to have. And that's a way to come together. If we just decide to let's just get pissed for a little bit about what's not working on this team, and the lack of dependability on this team. Let's talk about it in order to get through it. So then we can get to a land of people making clear promises and making clear requests. That's how a team moves forward. And I know you alluded to, you got a big offsite coming up. This would be great context for that.
Well, the offsite is a bit different, because it's not with my directs, it's more with my peers. So
got it.
That's not the same level of conflict. But yeah, one of the question or topic I wanted to address with you is, I mean, that's on your website. So why offsite sucks most of the time. So I would have more offsites with my team in the coming month. So what are some of the good practices that you recommend to leaders on how to approach those offsites, and to make the most out of it?
Sure. Well, what we do with any team that we've got, we put people through an assessment called the Harrison assessment. And there's lots of assessments out there, and I've taught lots of them, and most of them are fine. They're not used very well. But and a lot of people use assessment data as a weaponry. So Harrison is distinct in the sense that like it gauges, I'll just do a minute on this. I mean, it gauges somebody's preference, and preference is the only thing that's tied to performance and personality. It's not like personality equals performance. People's preferences, though, they do. So enjoyment performance theory is the leadership theory that goes with this. And it says that if someone's spending 70% of their time doing what they prefer doing, they have an increased chance of success of 300 to 400%. So the challenge, though, for humans, we don't have enough language for what we prefer. We know what we don't like, but we aren't clear about it, about what we do like and how to actually craft our job description, craft our activity around our preferences, because we're going to be much more active, much more successful around the things that we prefer doing. That's just the data, which we know that intuitively. That's when we get into a flow state. That's when we actually, take action early. That's when we see more data right away because it's inside of our zone of preference. So that's one of it. And then it also talks about leadership, like we've been talking a little bit, that leadership occurs in paradoxes. So in communications, for example, you must be frank at some level, and then you have to be diplomatic at another level. You've been way too diplomatic, right? You haven't been frank, right? Or asserting for your own needs. You've got your own needs that you've been putting on the back burner, and you've been trying to help other people. And there's a paradox there. Or enforcing, which is what we're talking about here as well. There's an enforcement score. If you took the assessment, which we can do this after this if you want, if you took the enforcement, it will give you a score, and then warmth and empathy, right? So how much do you keep the standard and how much do you create a warm environment? That's a paradox. So leadership happens in paradoxes. So we have everybody before our offsites, everybody takes the assessment. They do a 75-minute debrief with somebody on my team, and we put all that data together and show the culture map of where the team is. And the beauty of the Harrison is actually shows where they are at rest and where they go under stress. And you're under stress right now. Most of the team's under stress. There's layoffs and rumors and blah, blah, blah. Everybody's stressed. So we're on our worst behavior right now. And so in some ways it normalizes behavior. It's like, okay, look, here's we're all in this together. Here's where people are. And then also gives language for how to advocate for somebody else. So we build everything in that context about reality, about who someone is and who they're committed to being. And then we put people through a battery of exercises in order to illuminate that in real time. And then we can debrief it in real time. So it's not like we're learning about XYZ. No. We're going to be doing this, and it'll show us like a big mirror. It'll show us ourselves. Then we can debrief that, watch ourselves, get some feedback, issue forgiveness, whatever we need, whatever needs to happen. And then we talk about the future. Once we get clear on how we're showing up together right now, then we can talk about future plans, future goals, and then who we must be with each other in order to deliver on those outcomes. Because if you've got a really dysfunctional environment, and then you're going to say you're going to, I don't know, double your income next year or whatever your metrics are, you're full of shit, and everybody knows it.
Yeah.
Because we can't get there because we're still here. So you have to see this as it is, and then raise the bar for that and talk about what's really wanted and needed. And then you can make something great happen. So that's how we do it. I don't have a set of exercises that anybody else can go do, because you got to be really nuanced to be able to hold that context. But that's what makes a big pop for our teams. And if anybody listening wants to talk about that, let me know.
Yeah, totally. All right. Thank you so much for.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah, that was good. So I have a couple of closing questions if you are still 5 minutes.
I've got a minute and a half.
Okay. So how can the audience find you and hire your services?
Oh, you can, if you want to contact me, Instagram's easy, adrian.k on Instagram. You can fill out the form on takenewground.com, but just find me on Instagram and say, hey, and I'm just Adrian at takenewground.com as well if you want to email me. So I'd love to talk to anybody in your network, man. I'm down because you're awesome.
All right.
And
thank you so
you're
much.
a mover and a shaker, brother.
And what other leaders should I interview next? Who would you recommend?
Oh, you should interview my business partner. He's smarter than I am.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for your time, Adrian.
Of course, man.
Enjoy the weekend.
Awesome. Thank you, brother. Good to be with you.
Yeah, likewise. You stayed until the end. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Pay It Forward Society. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and share it with at least 2 people who would benefit from this discussion. Your support helps me reach more people and make a greater impact. You can also help me get discovered by leaving a 5-star rating and a review on your favorite podcast platform. I appreciate your support and look forward to continuing this journey with you. Bye.